Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm an over-enthusiastic Ethan, joined by Pete. Pete, are you in my level today?
I am always at your level. How are you, Ethan?
I'm super stoked because the tables have turned, my friend.
That's right. I get to call shotgun while you drive this time.
And drive we will, because I had the privilege of seeing Gran Turismo, and you have not seen it yet. So this will be a monolithic review where I will discuss and you can sit back passively, ask questions, pick holes, make snide comments.
I
typical
love it.
Back row stuff.
So just to give everyone an update, Gran Turismo was originally meant to come out very long time ago on the 31st of July.
Right.
That got delayed by 2 weeks to the 10th of August. It was supposed to come out this weekend globally.
Right.
It did have a preview screening on the 31st of July. Then it got delayed till the 25th of August in some markets. And at first, it looked like the Indian market was going to be unaffected until I tried to buy tickets and I found out that it too got delayed until the end of August.
Why? Why?
So a majority of the delays that we're seeing now are primarily going to be related to the writers and actors strike.
No way. Really?
I don't know if that's the case for Gran Turismo, but I will say that any movie that's supposed to come out over the next 6 months, if it gets delayed, it's likely because of the strike. I'm going to step off the gas, as it were.
Step off the gas.
And let you take over.
Let me make a few comments about Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
First of all, it's based on a true story.
What?
Which it's based on a true story.
No, it's not. It's a video game, right?
Since I've got your attention already.
Okay.
So Gran Turismo was developed by Sony, right? The PlayStation.
Yeah.
And it was intended to be the most realistic racing game.
Yeah.
And they took great pains in this movie to highlight who was the founder and explain exactly what his vision was for a realistic. They don't even call it a racing game. They call it a racing simulator.
Right.
And discuss how much effort they put into making sure that all of the vehicles that you can select are as realistic as possible, so that when you make like a left-hand turn or acceleration or something, that the car on your screen reacts as if the car would in real life. So they really go into a lot of details in terms of how this is a simulator, not a game. And then apparently what happened was Gran Turismo, in connection with Nissan, also a Japanese car manufacturer, collectively had what they call GT Academy. And that academy took players from around the world and offered them the opportunity to compete head-to-head in a competition, the winner of which would be sponsored by Nissan to actually race in real life.
Come on.
It is true. And the main character here, Jan Mardenborough, was the winner of the third GT Academy. They say that he beat out 90,000 other entrants, and he was then given a sponsorship by Nissan. And his first race in real life, not in the movie, but his first race in real life was something called 24 Hours of Dubai, which is held in the Dubai Autodrome. And that was his first race. And he's currently a professional car racer. He's been competing for about almost 10 years now, and he's still sponsored. He's gone from different circuits and different sponsors, but he's a professional race car driver now. So it's based on a real story.
Funny. So this is... So I had this down on our list as a video game adaptation, but this is also a biopic?
Yeah, it's both. So it's
God.
definitely a commercial for the game, although I think they could have done better. It's definitely a commercial for Nissan. I think they could have done much better. And it is a biopic. So this is a very, very good story, but if I were to describe this movie, I would say it's a totally acceptable and engaging movie that left a lot on the table. And I say this with a lot of respect to the director, Neil Blomkamp. But if this would have been a Michael Bay movie, it would have been exponentially better with the visuals, with the American flags, with the sound, and the tears would have been flowing. It's an exceptional story, but I feel that they left a little bit on the table, and it was too conservative in terms of playing up the emotional elements of this entire story. Yeah. So I was thinking throughout, this is exactly the type of movie that can't help but be engaging into audiences. But I'd left wanting a little bit more, and I just felt like there were some missed opportunities here. Let me go into how it begins. The cast is first Orlando Bloom, who's really let his British accent dangle in this movie. Yeah. He always, I felt, always tries to hide it a little bit. We've seen him in Carnival Row recently. We've seen him in how many other stuff? Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean. And I felt like he always kind of like hid his British accent a little bit. Here, it's flat out British accent. So I haven't done enough research on him, but he is apparently an executive at Nissan. And you're introduced to him kind of like arriving in Tokyo, Japan, for a meeting kind of like at the main headquarters. And this right away, I feel like it started off a little bit wrong. We don't have really enough background on his character. His character's name is Danny Moore. I feel like we needed a little bit more. Like, is he an ex-racer that is so passionate about racing? Was he like this amazing designer that's been like disgraced or falling on hard times? Like, what's his story? What's his character arc? Is he just a corporate sellout? Like, where is he coming from? Because it's very strange to have a British person fitting into the, the Nissan culture. We see him as a little bit of an outsider. He gives like a presentation in this big auditorium at Nissan, and you see a handful of people attending in this huge auditorium. So it makes it seem like he's employed by Nissan, but a little bit of an outsider. And it would have been interesting to kind of give a little bit more context in terms of, where did he get this position? Was he like a legacy racer and they gave him like this position to do nothing just because they wanted to like support him? Was he acquired in a merger? There wasn't enough about Orlando Bloom to kind of understand where he's coming from. But he makes this proposal to Nissan in this auditorium saying, hey, Gran Turismo is the most famous game of all time. And he goes into a lot of details in terms of, how popular it is and how realistic it is. And this is really the education process, which I thought was a pretty good way to incorporate it into the movie. And he says, hey, this is our target market for cars. All these gamers are really into cars. We make this high performance Nissan car. This is the market that we should try to be going after. What if we do it by having this competition and then we'll sponsor them? And like, no one really applauds. Okay. But then he's like leaving the conference room and some Japanese dude comes up to him and says, yep, your proposal is accepted. Like, very, very anticlimactic, like it's such a big thing. It would have been more interesting to make that like a more confrontational. He didn't really defend it that passionately. It's not like he went through all these hoops, continued to push it even in the face of like all this opposition. It was very, very anticlimactic. But the one condition is you need to have like a safety engineer on your team. He's like, yeah, of course. Okay. Again, not like a very unique condition. So Orlando Bloom contacts all these other like race engineers. Everyone says, no, no, no. He comes to the last person on his list, who is David Harbour.
Yay.
One of my favorite from Stranger Things, from Black Widow, from Hellboy. Love him, actually. He then kind of takes over as the main character. It's his responsibility to train kids or the gamers that are selected, to be in the academy. I felt that Harbour did a great job in this movie, but they really held him back a little bit. If they would have let him really, really play up his character, I think it would have been way more compelling.
In what way?
He just didn't have enough like personality in this movie. Orlando Bloom had nothing whatsoever. He offered nothing in terms of a likable or unlikable guy. You really just don't have enough Orlando Bloom context to like or dislike his character. He's just fodder. Harbour should have been the main character, someone that was funny, and he just didn't get enough material to be funny like he is in Stranger Things or as Alexei in Black Widow. He should have been kind of like a little bit like hard ass. You know, if you think about the relationship between Tom Cruise and who was the person in Days of Thunder, his mechanic, his chief. If you think of that relationship, that's David Harbour. And he just didn't get, I think, enough material to make him, to really take advantage of him. He's definitely one of the best parts of this movie. But honestly, if this would have been a Michael Bay movie, they would have unleashed him. He would have been much saltier. He would have been much funnier. He would have been much more clever. He would have had way bigger personality than he did in this movie.
Sorry to interrupt, but let me ask, do you think that is because not only is this a video game adaptation, but this is a biopic? I mean, at least on paper, probably not who this movie is supposed to be centered about, right? Like it should be the little kid who's the race car driver.
It should be the little kid as a race car driver, but I think even more that suits Harbour's character, where he can be a supporting actor who's got the funny lines, who's got the crass lines, who's got the emotional lines.
Yeah.
I just felt like, knowing how talented he is and how much I love him in other things, this was not his finest work, but I don't think it's because he gave a bad effort. I think he just didn't have a lot of material to work with.
I mean, based on the trailer, that's what I would have expected, right? Like I saw the trailer, he's pushing all the little kids to their limit. And in the trailer, one of the kids throws up on the side of the track and he just stands there and deadpans and says, "You threw up on my grass."
Yeah. See, stuff like that wasn't really funny. You know, like,
okay.
Did you laugh at that? Like, oh, you threw up on my grass. Like,
I didn't. But I thought that he was going to be that type of guy who's more of a wisecracking guy.
So and that's what I mean, is that he could have been that guy, but the few lines that he got that dealt with us weren't very funny, you know?
Got it.
Like, you threw up on my grass is a statement of what we just saw, right? Like there wasn't anything interesting or funny or humorous about it. So I felt like they gave him these just very basic things and said, okay, this will be funny. It wasn't funny. A newcomer named Archie Madekwe is the title character. And then, interestingly, Jan's mother is played by Ginger Spice, Jerry Halliwell.
You're kidding.
No way. Her first real movie credit. I was watching her throughout. She's the mom. And I was like, oh, who is this? Like, I know I've never seen her in anything before, but she looks so familiar. I looked at IMDb. Yep. Now she's called Jerry Horner. So apparently she's either married or divorced. But it is Ginger Spice. How funny is that, huh?
Yeah, hilarious. But all right.
A few things. As I said, the movie is absolutely fine. I would say it's a wait for streaming. It's a perfectly good movie to watch on an airplane, a perfectly good movie to watch on your laptop. But therein lies my complaint. This should have been our generation's Days of Thunder. This should have been a movie that inspired so many gamers who now probably play something else to get involved in Gran Turismo. This should have been a commercial for Nissan cars that made us look at Nissans in a totally different way that we've never visualized before. This should have been something so great with so much emotion and so much color and so much sound of the engines and the turns and the crowd. You're just like captivated by the emotion of the moment and you're shaking or you're tearing up or something. And I felt like this just didn't get there, and it's hard to put your finger on it. but everything I felt was just a little bit not bold enough. The color was not bold enough. The sounds were not bold enough. The music was not bold enough. The emotion was not bold enough. Not to like disclose all the plot, but just like in Days of Thunder, there's a crash, and the crash has a profound psychological effect on, you know, the main character, the driver. And of course, it's up to David Harbour to talk him back into the car, just like we saw in Days of Thunder, right? With Tom Cruise and Rowdy Burns and all the other characters we remember. That was such a huge event, and it just didn't carry the same level of captivating emotion that I feel like Michael Bay or someone would have put into this. You know, like even the crash itself kind of happened so fast. Like other crashes, you kind of know they're happening. Like you see it coming and you're like, this is going to be like instrumental in the context of the movie. And here it just kind of happened so quick and it was done. And you're like, whoa, like they didn't even do the buildup, you know? They don't show like the rusty nut coming loose. Sometimes they show like every lap, the person is like veering closer and closer to the edge.
Yeah, Rush was a very good example of that.
Yeah, you know, like Rush was a great example. There is no emotional buildup that if you didn't know this was coming from the real life story, it just like happened like out of nowhere. That to me was really disappointing. It would have been better if they would have shown like every lap closer and closer and closer, right? Or there was like a warning on the radio. I'm jumping topics, but that's another one of the disappointments I had in this movie is that there was a lot of telegraphing. Like they used the intercom between David Harbour and Jan Mardenborough to kind of like explain plot points, you know, like, okay, this is your last race and you've got to place fourth or higher so that you can get your FIA license. And if you don't get your FIA license, then Nissan won't sponsor you anymore. Like, come on, that's that's so bold to like say over the radio. Like it's just smashing it into the audience's face, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely like a better scene that you could have at like a bar, you know, the night before, you know, like we've seen this in so many other movies, right? Where they have the conversation and they explain like what the stakes are for tomorrow's race. You don't do this like on the first lap, like over the microphone from your crew chief to the driver, like, oh, FYI, you have to finish fourth or you won't have a license to race anymore. What to say? So I have to say, I really like this movie. Despite everything that I've said, I really like the movie. I definitely think that it's worth your time, it's worth your money. I don't think you need to say it or you don't need to see it in a cinema. But I would have to say that for me, the summary is that this was a lost opportunity. I'm mentioning Michael Bay. It could have been any number of directors. It could have been really, really a critically incredible movie. It could have been something that was our generation's Days of Thunder. And I have to say, there's one more complaint I have, a lost opportunity. Do you remember the Mighty Ducks?
Yeah.
And do you remember there was the Ducks and they played this other team and the best player on the other team was named Adam Banks. And then Emilio found a loophole that Adam Banks, their fiercest rival, yes, he was actually living in the wrong district and that he should have been assigned to the Ducks. So he came to the Ducks and it was a beautiful plot twist where your fiercest rival now has to become your teammate. And they showed that relationship being built and suddenly they were really good friends, right? And they were all aligned. And that's a great heel turn. There was something very, very similar in this movie where Jan was competing with all the other people for, you know, the GT. And then, you know, he had this huge rivalry with this other guy. And then there was a twist in the movie and they actually had to be teammates for the Le Mans 24 race, right? Because you've got like 3 people in Le Mans, just like we've seen with Ford versus Ferrari.
Right.
So then they became teammates and they didn't do any buildup. It would have been so great if they would have been like fierce rivals at each other's throat. Maybe they even like threw some punches in the GT Academy. Maybe they fought over the same girl. You could add like so many ways that they would have like just been hatred towards each other. And then when they were placed on the same team, they had to like overcome that. And then they became like super good buddies and blah, blah, blah. again, these are kind of like the missed opportunities when you look at this movie. They just said, okay, now you're teammates. And that was it. Like, no animosity, one fist bump, and they're all good. I felt like, oh man, like you're losing the Adam Banks opportunity here. This could have been like so emotional where these guys despised each other, refused to be teammates. Then they kind of had like this bonding exercise. They found out what they have in common, and suddenly like they're best friends and loyal teammates. And these are the little things, I think, that take a otherwise very good movie and then turn them into an all-timer, right? These are the opportunities you really need to take advantage of. And here I felt like they were really leaving a lot on the table, unfortunately. Good movie, could have been great movie.
Oh, well, I'm still going to watch it in the cinema when I get a chance, because
You should.
I know you said it wasn't maybe as high flying as it could have been, but you know, something about racing movies in particular, I think need a really good sound system.
Yes.
I think that you want to watch it in the big screen, not for the visual effects, but really for the audio effects.
Yeah.
So I'll give it a go.
Yeah, but I really feel that this has been a lost opportunity. When you just look at the high level, what this movie brings, if you're just pitching it, this is a true story. It's about racing. It's about friendship. It's about loss. It's all the emotional elements that you need in a movie, given the success of the Fast franchise, given the success of, Days of Thunder, given the success of so many other like racing movies or, action movies. I feel like this had all the elements that you needed for this massive, massive, beloved blockbuster. And it just fell a little bit flat in all parts. I really wish they would remake it and give it to Michael Bay and be like, just pimp the crap out of this. I want to see flags waving, hear the engines more. I want to see like fantastic crashes. I want to see passionate love scenes. I want to see friendship. I want to see a fist fight. I want to see everything. It just didn't unleash itself, I feel, to meet its ultimate potential.
Right. Okay, so having seen that now, I think one of the things that you and I are very good at is also being able to be a little bit more objective. When we have our own scoring or rating of a movie, we typically also be like, I didn't like this movie, but I think this movie is going to make a crap ton of movie in the theater because even though it wasn't for me, I can see an audience for that or not.
Yeah.
What do you think? So the budget for this movie is about 100 million. I don't know what print and advertising is. Do you think this is a $200 million movie, a $500 million movie? What do you think?
No. Before I saw it and having seen the trailers, I think I would have said this could be a surprise summer blockbuster. It's got all the elements that you want. Having seen it, I would be surprised if it broke even.
Oh, okay.
I don't think there's going to be any positive word of mouth. I don't think there's going to be negative word of mouth. I just don't think there's going to be passionate, positive word of mouth. And, again, having seen it, it's just not bold enough to really have the level of box office success that I want it to have. Really disappointing, I have to say, because the story, the movie are actually good. Apart from Orlando Bloom, who I thought kind of mailed it in. I thought the casting was great, actually. I wish they would have let David Harbour, off the hook a little bit. I wish they would have had a more Adam Banks with the dude who played Matty Davis.
Sure.
Apart from that, I think the cast is fine. I mean, that's kind of a big name cast even. Like Orlando Bloom is definitely not A-list, but he's still known when you say Harbour and Bloom. That's still a pretty good cast. Disappointing. That's what I would call it, is disappointing. But worth seeing.
All right, so Gran Turismo at the moment for you is a wait for streaming?
Yes, it's a wait for streaming.
So definitely one to watch, but don't need to rush out to the cinema.
That's right.
Let me do a ham-fisted segue.
Let's do a segue.
Speaking of movies based on either real life or on real life consumer products.
Oh, yeah.
Moving from Gran Turismo, let's just do a very quick mini review and discussion about the Beanie Bubble, which just released on Apple TV.
Well, we have both watched the Beanie Bubble, right?
That's right.
So first of all, what was your knowledge of Beanie Babies prior to this movie?
I think, like most people, my knowledge was limited to the fact that people were going absolutely bonkers for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I personally did not see the appeal. And at that time, I certainly wasn't in the mindset of this is an investment.
Yeah.
I wasn't making investments into anything at that time. I didn't see it as a financial asset. I didn't see it as anything other than what it was, which was a bunch of toys that were, in my opinion, grossly overpriced.
Yeah. I don't think anyone, like even my sisters, ever had a Beanie Baby. If they did, they had like one that maybe they got for like a birthday present. But again, the only thing I knew was I knew generally growing up that there was a craze for Beanie Babies and that there were some people who are obsessed with Beanie Babies. But like apart from seeing that in the news, we didn't have any exposure to that. So none of this was really a surprise to me, but I guess the details were things that I didn't know after you watched
Certainly
this
not.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was
Yeah.
fun to see all that stuff.
Let's put this movie into perspective, first of all. You could either have a movie about the craze itself, and this movie touches on the craze, but it's not really about the craze. You could have a movie about the founder himself, Zach Galifianakis, who plays the founder quite well. It's not really a movie about him, even though he has a prominent role. The movie is really kind of homage to the three women who are instrumental in the growth of this company and their stories, right? It's kind of a unique take on everything.
In this regard, it's very similar to the Tetris movie, which was not about how Tetris was programmed.
Right.
It was not about any specific person that was directly involved with the development of it. It was almost like a marketing effort.
Yeah.
Which is the same here, where we talk about the intern who was supposed to be a doctor, gives up being a doctor to work for the Beanie Baby company, and effectively comes up with online sales before anybody else does.
Right. What did you think of the movie?
In general, I'm a sucker for biopics.
Same.
I tend to score them a little bit higher than they probably deserve to be. Mm-hmm. What I am liking is there has been a slow shift recently over the last couple of years where biopics are no longer about specific people, but potentially about brands or products. So we've seen that with Tetris. We saw that with the Beanie Baby. We saw that with Air. We're not focusing on an individual person. We're focusing on a product. We're focusing on a brand. And that means that we don't need to worry about just who Phil Knight was. We're looking more into Nike as a company. We're looking more into this Beanie Baby company. We get to see about these people, of course. I like that too, because it's almost like a generalized version of a biopic.
Right.
I liked it. I thought it was interesting.
Is it a must subscribe or is it a mooch for you?
This for me is a great mooch.
I agree.
The Beanie Babies aren't exactly a product that I particularly care for one way or another, but I thought that this is a great mooch because you're not going to sit there and feel like your time has been wasted. There are certainly some funny moments in there, obviously carried by Zach Galifianakis. There are some really interesting things that are in there. We're starting to see how they're exploiting the birth of eBay. They're exploiting the birth of online marketing. And this was really viral marketing before viral marketing existed, right? Like this concept of limited editions.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
So I agree with you. From a ratings perspective, I think this is a mooch. But I think this movie has value for two reasons. One, this is something that can appeal to everybody from like a family perspective. I could watch this with my mom, for example.
Yeah.
I could watch this with my sister. My mom and dad could probably watch this together. Like this is a topic that has enough kind of cultural significance without having any real bad language, without having like graphic sex scenes, without having like any political statements in it, that everybody can kind of watch and be like, okay, like this is keeping my attention. It's interesting. I'm with this. And at the end, you can talk about it and not have like this big argue match about politics or violence or something like that, right?
Exactly.
So I think from that perspective, it's a very, very good and useful show. It's not timeless. And it's definitely not a must subscribe where you're not going to be able to put this down. But I think it absolutely serves its purpose. And I think that there's value in something that kind of is appealing to everybody and doesn't have like this overt statement in it that's going to alienate someone, right? It's just down the middle entertainment. Watch it, learn something, enjoy, move on with your life, you know?
Exactly. So, hey, can I ask, what did you think of Sarah Snook?
I mean, you know how repugnant I found her character in Succession.
Yeah. Was she able to shake that image off? I mean, here she's like the polar opposite, right? She is the loving mom of two young girls.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a complete 180.
I could still see some of her mannerisms as Shiv.
Yeah.
You know, like when she would ask a question, she still kind of made like the, I don't know what that face is, kind of wrinkles her nose, like, what? Is that right? Or why? Kind of thing. Like I could still see some of her mannerisms, and that's probably her as a person or her as an actress, but definitely she played a person who is much less alienating. And I don't think she should have overplayed that role. I think she played it honestly right down the middle. She's not a victim. She was a loving mom who was a little bit skeptical about, you know, like another relationship with two daughters, but she didn't act like, she didn't become violent. She didn't become, you know, overly emotional. She was just like expressed disappointment and just kind of like moved on with her life. So I have to say, like, that's probably a good role for her to distance herself from Shiv a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought Elizabeth Banks was great. I thought the lady who played Maya was great. I have to say, like, I thought this was a very well cast and acted movie. I thought everybody was perfect in their roles.
I like Elizabeth Banks. I've liked her since I saw her on Scrubs, so I thought that was great. So
I have to say, I feel a little bit for actresses sometimes, because for Sarah Snook, who comes from the highest of highs of being a lead character on Succession, it's tough to find like another role like that. Like now you're playing a mother of two, right? And those I think are pretty banal roles to be playing. Whereas Galifianakis isn't playing a nice guy, but he's playing the lead kind of villain, you know, and he can put his own stamp on that. When you're playing the mother of two, there's just kind of like limited range in terms of how much personal stamp you can put on that, you know?
Right.
Amanda Seyfried played Elizabeth Holmes. That's the type of role as an actress you live for, right? I mean, but even that is, you're playing another character, you're playing a biopic, but at least that's something where you can really demonstrate some range and put your own kind of stamp on it. But we don't have enough female criminals or bad people. Most of the criminals and the crooks and the bad people we have are males. And there's just no one else you can really cast for that, right? Anyway, that is The Beanie Bubble.
On Apple TV Plus. It is a fun watch if you are at all interested in that craze, or even if you've just tangentially heard of the craze, which you would have.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth a watch. I don't think you need to prioritize it. Even on Apple TV, I think there's at least 5 other shows we would recommend wholeheartedly before this. Having said that, it's still a good watch.
There will be another craze in the future. I mean, you could probably call crypto.
Crypto is definitely one of them.
Tokens a craze, but there's something about physical crazes that are more interesting than even like buying stocks or trading online.
Yeah, we're seeing that now, right? The Magic the Gathering cards, they go nuts, right? Post Malone just bought a Magic the Gathering card for $2 million. One card for $2 million.
I think Beanie Babies were a fun craze because they were so, I mean, they were cute and adorable, and they were like, that's, I think, a more compelling subject matter. Cards, trading cards, whether it's Pokemon or something else, are a little bit harder to get like super enthusiastic about, and digital assets even less so, right?
Oh yeah.
Like I think I can never get excited. I can get excited financially, but I cannot get excited from like a documentary perspective to do anything on like digital assets.
Even financially, the problem is that I will forevermore feel guilty about buying and selling an NFT and making a profit on that, because in my heart of hearts, I feel like it's a scam. So like to make money off of a scam like that, I don't know. Whereas, as you rightly said, a Beanie Baby, I mean, you're still selling a physical product. It's still a toy. You can still play with it. Sure, it's overvalued at $10,000, but it's still a real toy. It's not a carbon copy of, ones and zeros that you can't do anything with.
Pete is the ethics advisor for films and stuff, the moral compass.
You know how it is. As a people, we're all greedy. There's always going to be a craze for whatever it is.
Yeah. So now that we've seen Gran Turismo, I think we only have one more movie on our blockbuster list, right? And that's Blue Beetle. When is Blue Beetle coming out?
Blue Beetle is
this
next week. Yeah. The 17th of August, I think.
I kind of have high expectations for Blue Beetle, I think.
I think mine has actually dropped because it's been such an unexpected summer. Like things that we were supposed to do really well have not done really well.
You're right. And it's hard to draw conclusions because first, we don't have perfect information. And secondly, we're just kind of cherry picking things before the end. But my sense is that generally the things that have done better were things that were new or original. And the things that have been disappointing have been the sequels or the prequels, right? I mean, if you look at Fast, Mission, Indiana Jones, Flash, those all kind of underperformed. And the things that were surprisingly done well, Barbie.
Yeah, the so-called non-franchise movies have done very well.
So, I mean, I would expect Blue Beetle, particularly since it doesn't have a lot of competition, may exceed expectations in the sense that people are still kind of in those dog days of summer where they're looking to do something indoors. NFL hasn't started, professional sports haven't started. There's kind of that lull where there's maybe one final gap for people to say, hey, I'm going to spend the day inside the mall. I'm looking for a date night. We're not going to go outside. It's too hot to do exercise. There may be that one final gap. Problem is the character doesn't have enough name recognition. But I think overall the story could be compelling.
Could be. I mean, fingers crossed, right? I hope so, but let's see how it goes.
Let's see how it goes. Pete, can you summarize the details where our loyal listeners and followers can reach out to us for questions, comments, statements, and so forth?
Absolutely. If you have opinions on the Beanie Bubble movie or on Gran Turismo, keep it spoiler free because I still haven't seen it yet. Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. Email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Or as always, the best way to get in touch with us, like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell.
We love it when you hit the bell.
Thank you very much, Ethan.
Thank you, Pete. And thank you, listeners. We'll see you the next time on the Films and Stuff Podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.